Okay, today we are going to introduce counting by talking about the rhythmic values of notes and rests. In the 4/4 time, we have some primary values of notes. Here we have what is called a whole note. A whole note is an open note head without a stem on it. This vertical line here is called a stem, and you can see this one does not have one. So that is a whole note, and that is worth 4 beats. In addition to each note, when you would play or sing, there is also an equivalent rest. This is a whole rest. You notice that it hangs down below the staff line, and that is also equal to 4 beats. Put that over there next to that. Next down, you see this. This is a half note. It has an open note head, meaning it is not filled in. And the half note has a stem on it, whereas the whole note did not have a stem on it. Each of these half notes are worth 2 beats. So we'll put a 2 there. And of course, because your math skills are great, 2 half notes will fit equally into a whole note, because 2 plus 2 equals 4. These are half rests. And these can be a little tricky because they look a lot like a whole rest. It's a filled-in rectangle. But notice the half rests sit on top of the line, whereas the whole rests hang below the line. These half rests, some people think they look like a hat. And so you can remember hat and half kind of sound the same. They also get 2 beats apiece. These are called quarter notes. They have a filled-in note head, as opposed to the open note head that the half note had. And the quarter note also has a stem. These quarter notes are worth 1 beat apiece. And of course, there will be 2 quarter notes in every half note, and therefore 4 quarter notes within every whole note. Here's what the quarter rests look like. Some people think they look like the letter Z and the letter C put next to each other, put on top of each other. Little squiggly thing there. Next down below, we get a little bit more complicated. These are called eighth notes. Eighth notes look like quarter notes because they're filled in with stem on them, but they have this vertical line, this horizontal line attaching them together, attaching their stems. That line is called a beam, and that makes them into eighth notes. Eighth notes get 1/2 of a beat each. Now, if eighth notes are not next to each other, then we have nothing to beam them to. And we would put this little flag on there. They are also eighth notes, and they also get 1/2 of a beat. If we have a lot of eighth notes beamed together, we can beam them all together, and they are still eighth notes. They still get 1/2 of a beat each. One beam will always be eighth notes. We can label them accordingly. Now, these are the equivalent eighth rests. They also get 1/2 of a beat, and of course, because they are rests and not notes, they do not have beams. So we could continue to label down and call all of these 1/2 of a beat eighth rests. Finally, these notes down here, notice they have 2 beams on them, and these are called 16th notes. 16th notes will always have 2 beams on them, and they will very often be 4 beamed together, 4 notes beamed together. So I'm not going to label all of these, but we'll just call them all 16th notes all the way down the row. And then, of course, these are the equivalent 16th rests all the way down the row. Using fractions, you can discover that 16 16th notes will fit into 1 whole note, whereas 8 eighth notes will fit into 1 whole note, 4 quarter notes into 1 whole note, and 2 half notes into 1 whole note. You need to know the rhythmic values because when we start counting, This means how long you're going to hold each note or rest when you play or when you sing. There's your introduction to counting. We're going to add one more thing to that. And the last thing is, we're going to talk about this little dot behind the note. The dot behind any note, in this case it's a half note, the dot behind the note always adds half of the value of the note. So you'll remember that a half note is worth 2 beats, and then the dot is half of 2. So half of 2, of course, is 1, and 2 plus 1 equals 3, of course. The dotted half note will get 3 beats. What if this weren't a half note, though? What if it were a quarter note with a dot behind it? Here, the quarter note gets 1 beat, of course. Half of 1 is 1/2. And therefore, the dotted quarter note gets 1 1/2 beats. We could keep going further with the whole note. Half of 4 would be 2, and a dotted whole note would equal 6. Or we could even go with the 8th note or 16th note and break it down that way. So that's all you need to know for the rhythmic values in order to start in on rhythm counting.